In February of this year, the Office of Public Instruction was made aware of allegations of misconduct by Superintendent McGee, and in the form of allegations of plagiarism. And the procedure at OPI is the deputy superintendent would investigate that and determine if there's substance to them. If so, he convenes a licensure committee and asks if we would like to meet with the educator. And we did so in that case, and Superintendent McGee agreed to come in mid-April and meet with the committee, and at that time confirmed that yes, he had committed 5 acts of plagiarism in writing the superintendent's column for the district newsletter, the Falcon View. You'll hear a lot of reference to the Falcon View, and that is the district's newsletter that is, I guess, typically published monthly or thereabouts, not always exactly monthly. And these acts of plagiarism spanned several years, starting in the ones we had from 2010 through 2013. They're in your packet as exhibits 1 through 10. If you had a chance to look at them, they alternate from the Falcon View article submitted by Superintendent McGee and then the actual article from the author who wrote the work. So Deputy Superintendent Parman is going to testify, and he'll tell you about the substance of the meeting we had with Superintendent McGee last meeting when you decided that it was appropriate to have a contested case hearing. And in that SJ2 letter from John McGee to Pete Donovan, dated May 31st, Superintendent McGee strenuously objected to Superintendent Juneau's recommendation for a reprimand, saying that the Lawrence Carlton Board of Trustees has already addressed the matter. He asserts that it was dealt with locally. He was appropriately disciplined by his board, and he and his board want to move on. He claimed in this response that your review, this hearing today, will harm his district and his community, and I beg to differ. This hearing is not about whether John McGee is a good guy, good superintendent. Who supports him and who doesn't is not relevant. What this hearing is about is a serious breach, an admitted breach of ethics and violation of public trust. And nonetheless, Superintendent McGee asked you to do nothing and to overlook his professional misconduct in lieu of a local employment action. And you will be told he has his board support, staff support, some community support, and I say that is great. But it's not relevant to your decision, and it's not relevant to the matter before you today, because this isn't about his popularity in the community. We're not asking you to hire or fire Superintendent McGee. What we're asking for is a reprimand that won't affect his local employment at all. And Superintendent McGee complained in his May 31st letter to the board that there was some motive behind this request, apparently blaming a small group of district parents and ex-parents of students they're the root of all of this and why we're here today. But don't be misled. There's no one to blame this hearing but Superintendent McGee himself for his actions. And I hope this board will send a message to Superintendent McGee, to his community, to educators of Montana and the public that plagiarism, serial blatant plagiarism, is not acceptable from a Montana state licensed educator. And I hope you'll support Superintendent Juneau's recommendation for a reprimand.
I'm here today on behalf of Superintendent McGee. And what comes to mind through this process is really what I've seen before boards of trustees a lot. And that is when boards of trustees are considering the appropriate consequence relative to a student's conduct or a teacher's conduct, there's really 2 questions the board of trustees needs to ask itself. The first question is, was there a violation of some policy? Was there a violation of some standard? That's the first question. And then the second question is, if there was a violation of some standard or policy, what is the appropriate consequence for that violation? And in this context, it's the same set of questions that the Board of Public Ed has to ask. First question is, was there a violation of some standard applicable to educators in Montana? And the answer is yes. In the stipulation that Ann and Catherine mentioned, Superintendent McGee admitted to acts of plagiarism, admitted that they were mistakes, errors, lapse of judgment, however you want to characterize it, a wrong thing and a bad thing to do. That has been stipulated to, has been agreed to. So really then the question before the Board of Public Ed is this the appropriate thing to do in response to it? Is a letter of reprimand from the Board of Public Ed an appropriate consequence for this particular violation? And we'll submit that it's not, for a whole bunch of reasons, some of which have been alluded to by Ann. Unwittingly, this process has become part of a local controversy. And it's our position, frankly, that if a letter of reprimand is issued, that controversy is not going to get better for the local district. It will probably get worse. Unfortunately, certain people have used this process to try to criticize, hammer, punish, whatever you want to do, the local board of trustees who did take action in this regard. They did take action when it was self-reported to them by Superintendent McGee. They took action in his evaluation. Then they took further action, as the records that you have in front of you will show, in March of this year, fairly harsh action. They reprimanded him, placed a letter of reprimand in his file that will stay there as long as he's employed in the district. They asked him to correct his errors. They asked him to apologize for his errors. And then they suspended him for 10 days without pay. Those are pretty strong reactions to a pretty strong error. Those consequences that the board implemented were in addition to what Superintendent McGee imposed upon himself, which he'll explain. And like a good educator, he's taken this opportunity to make it a teachable moment, to make amends with his staff, his faculty, and his students, and in the meantime, explain to all those people why this is something that you shouldn't do. And the question is it appropriate to issue the letter of reprimand? What would a letter of reprimand do in this case? Would it improve Superintendent McGee's behavior in this regard? I'd submit no, it won't. That the board did, and that Superintendent McGee did to himself has done that. Will it somehow improve public education in the state of Montana? No, I don't think it will. Or alternatively, if you apply this standard to any number of other educators, this board's going to be awfully busy reviewing letters of reprimand against any number of administrators, teachers, whoever's licensed through your procedures. So you'll hear today from Superintendent McGee on what he did in reaction to the mistakes he made. And that's really what it boils down to, is based on what he did after March, is that sufficient to satisfy the public's interest, the local school district interest, and his professional interest? And we'd submit that it is. That really adding a letter of reprimand to this is not going to change his behavior, improve his behavior, but really would add additional fuel to a local controversy that fortunately this has become part of. There's no disagreement by Superintendent McGee or his board, frankly, that the Board of Public Ed has the authority to look at this issue and issue a letter of reprimand. That's in our laws. That's absolutely clear. The question is whether or not that's the appropriate thing to do, and we submit that it's not. And don't take my word for it. You'll hear from Superintendent McGee, and you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions.